Hello everyone, I'm Terri Mottershead. I'm the Executive Director of the Centre for Legal Innovation at the College of Law, and you are indeed very welcome to be joining the Women Legalpreneurs Special Interest Group, which is a special interest group of the Centre's Legalpreneurs Lab. We're absolutely delighted to have so many of you joining us today from so many different continents and so many different backgrounds. It's just an absolute pleasure to be able to spend the time with you. As you know, this is the launch of a series, so there will be a whole bunch of additional sessions that will be running through this special interest group. So please, when you receive the evaluation at the end of this session, do let us know what topics are of importance and interest to you. But for today, we've chosen the topic for you, as you know, which is thinking like a founder, nature or nurture. In a couple of seconds, I'm going to have this absolutely amazing panel of trailblazing women and legalpreneurs, all of whom are located in Australia, to introduce themselves. And of course, we will chat with them during this session as well. I firstly want to welcome on your behalf, Genevieve, Fiona, Sacha, Riz, SJ, Sarah and Caryn. That's kind of their, familiar names, and I'm sure that they would like you to use those if you're addressing any questions to them. But having said all of that, let me kick off from the very beginning and ask each of these folks to introduce themselves. And we're going to kick off by getting them to effectively tell their stories, what got them where they are today. And also a little bit about their firms or organisations, because that provides some context for that discussion as well. And Genevieve, I'm coming to you first. Welcome. Hello. What's your story?
Thanks, Terri, and hi, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm Genevieve Collins. I'm the Chief Executive Partner of Landon Rogers Lawyers. We're a firm of nearly 600 people and around 80 partners across 3 states, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. So look, my history, I guess personally, I started here at Landon Rogers as a graduate lawyer and I did personal injuries litigation. But before that, I think it's true to say I did grow up in something of an entrepreneurial family. At uni, I worked for my brother, Sean, who started Australia's first personal computer magazine and then ultimately went on to found Australia's largest internet provider, which Aussie Mail. But I actually missed out in terms of the family on any technical skills whatsoever. And working there at APC, they absolutely kept me away from anything to do with technology. But, I could write. So my job was to edit the exhibitors' blurbs for the early tech shows. And I think from there along the way, I've seen the really exciting opportunities that digital entrepreneurship provides. And in terms of the discussion today, I think my perspective is from that of a traditional law firm of reasonable size promoting an innovation agenda. And I think coupled with that, as we're all women on this call and in this discussion, I do actually see advantages to being a female lawyer and a female entrepreneur. I think our emotional repertoire, our ability to juggle, less ego perhaps around failure, tendency to collaborate, all of these themes seem to me to lead to female success as lawyers and as entrepreneurs, which run together. So I really look forward to exploring this with the other panelists today.
Thanks so much. And I can already feel the questions welling for me. So do please, as I say, throw those questions in at any time if it's likewise for you. So there was a mention of tech. So Sacha, we've got to come to you next, right?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Sacha Kirk. I'm the co-founder and chief marketing officer at Lawcadia. Lawcadia is a cloud-based business that in-house legal teams and their law firms use for matter management, legal intake and triage, and spend management. For me personally, I actually grew up on a cattle property, an isolated cattle property in North Queensland. And I grew up working in the business, helping my parents. I'm probably about 6th generation from a farming family. and they've always been quite innovative and entrepreneurial. So I guess that's kind of, you know, my background. I studied marketing at university, and for the first 10 years of my career, I worked for large FMCG companies in Australia and the UK, working in marketing and innovation roles. So I spent a lot of time working with finance teams, manufacturing, and procurement. And when I started consulting into law firms, it was actually that juxtaposition of the legal industry versus almost every other industry that really sparked for me lots of ideas about how the legal industry could perhaps change the way they're working and use technology, and really saw some opportunities for transformation. In terms of my contribution to the conversation today, I guess I'm bringing my experiences as a founder of a tech business, and I'm also not a lawyer in a room full of lawyers. I'm a marketing and business professional, and really, I guess, really proud of what we've brought to the legal industry.
And also speaking, I guess, Sacha, to that increasingly multidisciplinary nature of legal practice now as well, which is great to see. So taking the threads of entrepreneurship and law firms, Riz, I'm coming to you next.
So my name's Riz McDonald. I'm the founder of Found Legal. I set that business up in September 2019 as an online law firm using technology to my advantage. My background, so I come from a very multicultural background where growing up, girls' education wasn't considered or deemed important. So I was taken out of school when I was 13, but I have a bad habit of not accepting what I'm told, or a good habit. It depends on which way you look at it sometimes. And so by the time I was 16, I figured I could learn how to sew, which I didn't like, and also do a deal with the director of the youth training scheme to learn how to type and take up my education where I left it. That led me to working at Eversheds as an office junior, and I met some amazing women there, and they showed me what was possible as a woman, and that kind of led me into law. And I guess my approach has always been that if there's a barrier, if there's any kind of obstacle, you can either get over it, through it, under it, or some way around it, and nothing can stop you if you're determined enough, and if you have the right people with you as well and around you. So what's my contribution? I guess I'm going to be talking about my experiences both as an e-commerce business owner and running my law firm. I don't use the word law firm, to be honest. I call it an online business, and talking to those experiences as well today.
Riz, as I was listening to you, many things were coming to mind, but particularly the quote that's at least been attributed to Ruth Bader Ginsburg: well-behaved women seldom make history. So I'm just kind of going to throw that out there as perhaps a question or talking point today as well. Caryn, I'd love to come to you, because it kind of seems, in the scheme of things, we should be talking to you now. Hello.
Thank you very much, Terri, and obviously delighted to be involved in this panel today. So I'm Caryn Sandler, and I'm a partner and the Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at Gilbert & Tobin. And Gilbert & Tobin is a national law firm, just over about 1,000 people now, in both Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. So I started my career, did the traditional sort of LLB and commerce as well. And I think I probably did that as a combined two passions for me, both my awareness of the law and really wanting to make a difference, and then also the business side of things as well. So I was quite entrepreneurial sort of growing up, and always had a sort of eye to the papers and what was happening in big deals. So I moved in to sort of grad roles at large law firms, both in Australia as well as in the UK. And I practiced as a equity capital markets and M&A lawyer for about 8 years or so. And then, like many women do, I had children and decided that the hours probably weren't conducive to you know, a very young family. So I made a very, very difficult decision for me at that point in time, because I loved M&A law, about coming out of the law and moving, not coming out of the law, but not having a client-facing role. And I was fortunate enough to take a PSL, or a knowledge lawyer, role at Gilbert and Tobin. And then sort of 5 years later, having done that for 5 years, I moved into an innovation-related role, and sort of the rest is history. So I now lead the legal service innovation team. It is a very large team, you know, at times in excess of 80 to 100 people, depending on, you know, how many sort of people we have in our service delivery centre. And yeah, looking forward to discussing with everyone today.
Fantastic, thank you. And just an amazing story, Caryn, in terms of, and the story, I think, of a number of people on the panel, where they started in law but have also kind of moved on to something new and different and expanding in our broadening ecosystem, which takes me to you, Fiona.
Well, hello there, Terri. Hi, everyone. I've had a little sneak look at the participants list, so I see lots of familiar names on there. So hi, everyone. I am from Scotland originally. I, like a couple of the other women on the panel, grew up in a reasonably entrepreneurial family. My dad was actually a truck driver, left school at 15, but he and mum went on to start and run a pretty successful trucking business, which my 3 brothers now run, and my 4th brother, because I'm the youngest, my 4th brother runs a very successful demolition business. So I prefer fashion to hard hats and steel toe capped boots. So I ended up studying law at Aberdeen, which I've just worked out where Riz studied as well, in such a small world. And spent about 3 years in Scotland working for a firm, McGregor Donald, which is now Pinsent Masons. And like Caryn, I was also an M&A lawyer. I was very attracted to Sydney and Australia, having travelled here as a backpacker, and basically assumed get a job over here. I did. Turns out that I love lawyers, but I don't love law. So for the last 20 years of my career, instead of being a lawyer, I've helped lawyers. I spent 10 years in legal recruitment. Some of you spoke during that time. And then the last 12 years, I've been coaching and training and doing keynote speaking, mainly within the legal industry as well. I don't necessarily think of myself as an entrepreneur, but I do think I've got a knack for seeing where there might be a bit of a gap in the market around networking and connecting people, which is one of my great loves. And that's resulted in 2 recent ventures, one called Smart Women Connect, which is a networking group for women, in which I hope to get back up and running. Thank you, COVID. And the second, most recently this year, is Women Lawyers Academy, where I'm building training portal for women like you, making it affordable, accessible to get the non-technical legal training that you need to have a really successful career in law. It's an honor to be on this panel. Terri always runs a good show, and the other women on the panel are absolutely fantastic. So looking forward to sharing my insights.
Thank you, Fiona. And Sarah, I'm going to throw over to you now, because you might love the lawyer and the law.
I might not want to commit to that, actually. I'm one of these people who keep complaining about the law, and realising, though, how rewarded I have been by my professional career to date. So it's a bit of a conflicted relationship, really, I'd have to say. But thank you so much for including me with this fantastic group of people and for this event. The founding story of Justicia was actually preceded by both myself and my co-founder having worked for about 13 years in 2 large firms. And we received, like many of the people who will be tuning in here, we received excellent training and formation as lawyers. But we got to a point where we decided that we wanted to create something new and, of course, better than what we had experienced to that point. So we founded a law firm that we named after the Roman goddess of justice, Justicia. And so I think one of the reflections I have about that early stage is the fact that I did step out with another person. And I think, you know, there might be listeners who are wondering whether this is something to do on their own or to do with others. And I would certainly recommend doing it with others because it's a lot of fun to share the journey with somebody else, and you get to make decisions together, which enables you to sleep better at night, because otherwise you do worry sometimes about the big calls you have to make. And also you don't have to actually be good at everything. So you've got one or other people that complement you in terms of their skill sets. So that was certainly our experience. So we started off with essentially our bare hands, a couple of computers, the front room of my house, and slowly, based on our experience to that point and our contacts, built our clients and our client base over a period of 10 years. And we experienced many highs and a few lows over that time, as you do when you build a business. So fast forward 10 years, the next significant turning point for the firm was when she departed the firm. My co-founder departed to accept a judicial appointment. And I'd have to say that was a very significant moment for me personally and for the firm, because I was actually so worried and panicked about what next. Were the clients going to hang around? What would my colleagues think? Would they want to stay around? So thus began really a personal journey for myself and for the firm around how do I survive this experience and how do I grow? And so the things that I did was that I read every management book that I could put my hands on leadership and management. I got myself a mentor. Every opportunity that crossed my path, I took it up, whether it was collaborating with someone, public speaking, joining a group. I did have a team around me, so I really felt very strongly I had to role model what my expectations of them might be. And I also learned really a lot more about collaboration, because when you're leading on your own, you actually do need everybody on board, and you have to work with people a bit differently to the way that you do when you're working with a group of partners. So that was an interesting insight. So what was wonderful about that journey about learning about successful businesses, I was looking at those fairly carefully, and how do you make them sustainable? All of that knowledge and expertise has really fed into my legal practice as a workplace lawyer and advisor. It's also fed into the next sort of big step really most recently, which is our new website. So it's the third website in the life of the firm, which the firm's now 16 years old. And as any of you that have been involved in developing a website know, wow, what a huge task that is. Synthesizing what your messaging is, and reframing and communicating to your clients and to the world really what you're on about. So we have just launched that in the last few days, and so that's really pleased about that achievement. But probably the biggest achievement, given what I've just told you about losing a co-founder, was that in the last 18 months was able to appoint 2 of my colleagues to be my fellow partners, and I see that as really the greatest step forward for the future. And no doubt we'll touch a bit on succession planning. But I think founders often can talk about their businesses as if they're the only ones that make it run. I don't know, they forget that actually there's a whole team of people that need to be acknowledged. And I would like to do that now that there's many people that have walked through our doors over the last 16 years that have contributed to our firm and our firm's success. And I know that the topic really that we're discussing is, nurture or nature in relation to being a founder. And I would like to suggest and start that conversation by saying that I think it's a bit of both. So thanks, Terri.
Thank you. And we're gonna pick up on a whole bunch of that stuff as well. So thank you very much for that. We're now moving from the east coast of Australia over to the west. And SJ, your thoughts, because you're coming from a unique position of being a client of many of these folks, right?
Yes, indeed. Hi everyone, I'm SJ, and thanks Terri. I'm so delighted to be part of this. Wow, I'm just blown away by the stories of all the women on this panel. It's going to be amazing. So thank you very much for that. I'm in-house at Chevron Australia, and Chevron is a multinational energy company. And I'd like to just share a little bit about my Legalpreneurs journey. I can actually pinpoint exactly when I started on this journey. And it was when I was watching IBM's Watson win the game show Jeopardy. And at that time, it totally captured my imagination. I thought, wow, we can use this in the law, and I can use it in my role at Chevron. Like, this is amazing what can be done. So of course, IBM's Watson was my first AI love. And since then, I've joined an AI group, I've built AI models. At the moment, I'm enjoying and having a lot of fun with a model called GPT-3. And I've got it writing posts on legal innovation, and I've got it translating from legalese to plain English. So I'm having a lot of fun. But perhaps the reason that I'm delighted to be on this panel is really just to share something about building a community and a network and a culture in which innovation can thrive. And I think that's a really important thing. So, you know, at Chevron, I founded a group called TIGGLES, which is short for Technology Interest Group Law, but you've got to have a catchy title, right? So TIGGLES. And look, TIGGLES started off with just 3 of us geeking out. And now we have over 100 people throughout Chevron worldwide. We have many initiatives in legal departments around the world. And we have our lawyers who are building their own apps, implementing design thinking, connecting with data scientists and using analytics and visualizing data. So there's lots of exciting things that are happening. But that's not all. I'm really delighted and I feel very honoured and a little bit daunted to say that earlier this year, the Australian Association for Corporate Counsel reached out and they asked me if I would found up a special interest group for in-house lawyers aimed at creating a community and a network where we can share and collaborate and really future-proof ourselves. So my vision is that community is so important. And that's why I'm so thrilled to see how many people are just on this call to talk about having an entrepreneurial spirit in the law. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. And I just want to steal that acronym TIGGLES and try and use it anywhere, you know, even if I put other words to it, because I think it's just great. So I'm working on that, SJ. I'll come back to you about that. You know, we've used the word founder. A couple of you used it specifically, but I guess it's also in the title of the session today. And so I wanted to ask a few of you, particularly what that means to you, but I also want to direct the question to everyone who's participating. So I would love it if you would throw into the chat, and that's at the end of your screen, a little bubble, throw into the chat box what or how you define the word founder. So just throw that in. It'd be quite interesting to kind of share that because it'll mean, I imagine, different things to different people. And why folks are doing that and contributing to the chat. Sarah, you mentioned it a couple of times. What does it mean to you? What does that word mean to you?
Well, I think it is about having an idea and starting something new. And it's important in starting something new, depending on what your aims and goals are, that you potentially have scoped out that it's something that is actually new, so that there's a space in the market, whether it's a business or whether it's a law firm, that you are able to provide something, a service or a product that is new and contributing. And the founder is, or the founders are the drivers and the energy and the hard work that goes to putting that out into the marketplace. And I sort of touched on the word sustainability, and it's one thing starting a business, but it's another thing ensuring that it has longevity. And Terri, you probably know more than most of us what, you know, the stats are on how long small businesses survive. You know, it's a pretty small number of years. And mostly I think all of us want to create things that are going to be around for a long time, if possible, if they're based on good values. So a founder is someone who's driving that, and it's the sweetest feeling of all, I think, to start something and to see it grow, and to know that your hard work is what's contributing to that creation.
Thanks for that. And Sacha, what I'm seeing coming up in the chat here, and I'm just kind of pulling out words particularly that are jumping out, are things like people with an idea, new is coming through a lot, visionary, originator, someone who's kind of there from the very beginning. What are your thoughts? How have you kind of wrapped that into the definition as you use it in your business?
I think what Sarah was saying, and those words that you were using, Terri, they're absolutely spot on. Creating new things, backing yourself, and going for it. And I think I'm so lucky because I have an amazing visionary co-founder, and I love having someone to do it with. And I love how Sarah's talked about her experience of doing it with someone and then having to go it alone. And I think for me, so my co-founder is a previous corporate law and private practice. We've known each other 25 years. And when you've got a co-founder, you've got each other's back. You celebrate the wins. And when you don't have a win, you pick each other up and dust each other off. And you've got different strengths that you can play to. But I think coming from a background of founding a startup, what really resonates with me is what Elon Musk said, which was running a startup is like eating glass and staring into an abyss. And that's kind of like what my experience has been at times. So when you are a founder, it's all about taking on risk. And that's why, if you've got a co-founders, then, you're both taking on risk. So it's about taking on risk. That's financial risk. It's also risk of failure, opportunity cost. You're doing this startup while you're not, doing all these other amazing things in your career. And you also have to deal with a lot of ambiguity, and that's the staring into the abyss. You'd have no idea what's in front of you, and you've just got some ideas that you think are right, and you've got to try and navigate through that uncertainty. And then I think that eating glass is, as a founder and as a co-founder, it's about having to do things that are incredibly uncomfortable. There might be things that you've never ever had to do before. There might be things that you don't like doing, but you have to do them anyway. And that's I think really what being a founder is, because you have to have so much resilience to be able to keep eating that glass and staring into the abyss and having that hope and that passion and that vision that you're going to be successful in the end.
Yeah, it's that comfort with ambiguity, isn't it? Which is kind of the world that we're living in regardless now, right? And so, Fiona, I know you said that you don't consider yourself to be an entrepreneur, but I actually think of you as a serial entrepreneur. So how do you define founder then?
I think for me, I think it's related to risk as well, as Sacha was just talking about. But to me, a founder is someone, well, actually, I would probably differentiate between an entrepreneur and a founder. To me, an entrepreneur, I never ever called myself that. I was never comfortable with it. I don't really particularly like the term. But to me, an entrepreneur is an Elon Musk or, someone, one of my brothers is an immense entrepreneur who, I've always said, if Ross lost everything tomorrow, he would just dust off and start again and build something completely new, because he does have that incredible ability to take risk and to see the gaps in the market. Whereas I think a founder, for those on the line, there will be lots of people on the line who are an employee and who don't want to or cannot take the risk of starting or founding their own business. And that's perfectly okay. So to me, a founder is someone who can take a risk in any environment. So even if you're an employee in that sort of environment, and you start something new, and again, to sort of, I've been looking at the chat as well, just to clarify, new doesn't always have to mean brand new. It could be a new way of doing things, a different way of doing things, or taking something that was working okay and improving that and making it better. And so to give an example, I worked with HPE a number of years ago. And I was contacted there by a woman who was an EA, an executive assistant, and she had started their Women in Leadership group. So this is probably about 8 or 9 years ago now, when gender diversity was just sort of hitting its strides in Australia. And she just took it upon herself as an EA to do that. And she left the business many years ago, but she created this incredible legacy through founding that group. So I just wanted to be really clear to everyone, you don't have to have a visionary. I don't think any of my ideas are visionary, but I am prepared to go out there and try to make a difference to people. So anyone on the line that cares about making a difference, you definitely have a founder's mentality as well.
But all of you have also spoken to my mind, two really essential things as well. And it came up particularly in what you were just saying, Fiona, that ability really to be able to recognise an opportunity, but also to overcome challenge. I think we expressed it as resilience, and as it often is. So let me take each of those in turn, and I'm going to come to you first, Genevieve, if I may. how do you recognize that opportunity? Like we've talked about seeing things that are new or looking at them differently. How do you do that? How do you know something is potentially something you can run with or should?
Thanks, Terry. Look, I think in practical terms for me, it's about maintaining curiosity and identifying that opportunity or gap. But having said that, I think the thing I guess I'm most proud at as running with an innovation agenda at Landon Rogers is recognising that if we didn't do something, we would fall behind. So it was actually an imperative. I'd like to claim it was a great vision, but it wasn't. It was an imperative that I had to address. So I very much resonates with me that I had a challenge. And what we did together, obviously this team, the concept of team resonates. I have a wonderful team that I work with. But what we realised is that we needed to stabilise the back end, modernise our systems and transform into more innovative solutions, for example, our Law Tech Hub. But what also dawned on me was that we couldn't do it each in sequential order. We had to do it at the same time or we would never get ahead. So it was really just about addressing that obvious imperative for me.
Riz, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm sure that, you know, you've had to think about things differently given your background and then almost moving into a different sort of professional services industry. How do you recognise an opportunity, or how did you?
So for me, it's the first time I recognise an opportunity, and taking to what Fiona said as well, and going back to that point on finders and entrepreneurs, I think I'm a wee bit of a serial entrepreneur. And I started when I was about 8, when I recognised an opportunity to buy some dolls on the cheap and then jazz them up and sell them for a profit because I really wanted to buy some books. So I saw an opportunity that I could, you know, run with and make a profit on. And it's the same with Find Legal. I saw an opportunity to gain freedom, I guess, freedom of choice, freedom of time, all those different things. Don't get me wrong, I work bloody hard, and it's not about, you know, working 9 to 5 or working 2 till 3 or whatever it might be. It's about my ability to have some freedom in what I do. And so when I decided to set up Find, I saw an opportunity. There was a gap in the market, and that led me to, you know, set up Find, as well as that opportunity to give myself some freedom. And I don't regret it at all. And I wish I'd done it a wee bit sooner in some respects. But yeah, it's seeing that opportunity and taking it. And you know, sometimes I do have a tendency, and I know that not everyone's like that. I do tend to sort of fly by the seat of my pants, and it might not always be a great idea to do that as well. But touch wood, so far it's proved successful, shall we say.
But what you and Genevieve in a way have also spoken about, I think, is the fact that those opportunities don't necessarily come at a convenient time. You know, you're going to have to be ready, willing, and able. And is it also as part of it, and I'm putting this question really to both Genevieve and you, is part of it also having a bit of a mindset shift and being open to that, even pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a bit?
Absolutely. If I didn't push myself out of my comfort zone, look, I'm a mother of 2, you know, and so I have all these responsibilities that I had to consider. So when I started Find, I was still working full time, and I was doing that on the side, trying to this fledgling little germ of an idea I had of how I wanted it to be, sort of mulling around a wee bit. And then I started mapping out, well, what does that actually look like, and what would it take for me to get me from working full time for somebody else and working full time for myself, and what does that involve, or was I willing to then take those risks? So I didn't necessarily go from full-time work and straight into without any kind of safety net. You know, I did, you know, map out what did it look like, what were the risks to me and risks to my family, and how could I mitigate that. So I did do some logical, practical thinking and not completely fly by the seat of my pants. So there are considerations, but being open as well and having the right mindset to think, well, I can do this if I do all these other things. as well.
So your side hustle became your main hustle. I like that.
Yes.
Genevieve, what are your thoughts on that? Is it uncomfortable to be, a legalpreneur, let's say?
I really resonate with that concept of mindset, Terri, because I think stepping out of your comfort zone is exactly what you do need to do. And I often tell people in promotion speeches, etc., that I love the Eleanor Roosevelt concept of doing something every day that scares you, because that behaviour then becomes a habit, and that habit becomes a characteristic. That's who you are. You are a person that is willing to step outside your comfort zone. Not because you wake up one day and decide that's who you're going to be, but because that's what you think about every day. You're going to do it step by step, small step by small step. And I think it makes a real difference.
Oh, 100% agree there, Genevieve. I mean, when I look back at the pictures of me with my children, I'm barely visible because I didn't like being in front of the camera. So I'd force myself to be. And as part of running Find, I have to be in front of the camera. I have to be on my socials, etc. And that makes me, or made me, and still sometimes makes me very uncomfortable. And I've had to do that despite being a bit of an extrovert.
And look, there are challenges obviously in all of that. And Caryn, how do we overcome those challenges? Are they something that we just push through? Do we create a framework? I mean, how do we do that? How do we do them when they present themselves? And they will.
Absolutely, Terri. I think certainly from my perspective, I certainly haven't used any methodologies or anything like that, but I've taken the approach that you constantly push those boundaries and you constantly evolve what you're doing to enable a particular outcome. So to give a bit more color around that, I mean, obviously I work within the Gilbert and Tobin sort of law firm, but the area in which I work is more in the innovation space. And I have been at pains to basically move what we do is to what is broadly perceived within the industry as more of a support area to an area that is absolutely demanded by top tier law firms and also clients to enable the best outcomes for us. So it's really being that constant sort of positioning and rebutting that challenge around, this is support and overhead to this is actually highly valued. Yeah. So when I think about, how I thought about that, it's like, you start developing those really trusted relationships within the organization. And I'm fortunate in that I really do work for a very forward-thinking organization. So, I had a good start there. But, bringing people along for the journey has been absolutely critical. And I think, that is really important, that engagement piece, because I'm very passionate about what I do, but you have to bring everyone along for the journey with you. So I think that's a key aspect to sort of overcoming those challenges. And then certainly what I've been very much focused on is also moving our clients in that direction as well, because the clients now see a huge amount of value in innovation. So if you can help with that sort of discussion and really think about both their own transformation as well as what they expect from law firms, so you really change that dialogue in the industry, that has been key from a success, certainly from my perspective, to our team moving in that, this is a team that creates true value for the organization. And yes, we're not perfectly there yet, but we are well and truly along that journey. And something that used to be perceived as very much overhead support is very much, perceived as very valuable towards the organization. And I think that's probably evident in my promotion to partnership. I suppose if the firm hadn't thought that that was the case, that wouldn't have happened. And certainly I think a lot of our team members feel the same way within the organization. So definitely, I think there are ways in which you overcome challenges. I mean, on a personal front, I obviously moved from a very demanding client-facing role in M&A law to a knowledge lawyer role. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the reasons for me doing that was because I felt that the demands were too much for me having a young family. I still have a relatively young family, but obviously have done a complete 360. So I still wrestle with that, how do you manage the work and how do you manage the life side of things? And again, I think for me, it comes down to passion. It's not perfect. And I I think I would be lying if I said it was perfect. But for me, it's around, I'm very passionate about what I do. I feel very fulfilled as an individual. And I also make sure that I'm very available for my family as well. So I leave the office at a pretty normal time. I'm out there pretty much, everyone knows I'm gone by about 5:30, but then I will get back online once they've gone to sleep. And that means I can spend some quality time with my family as well. So I think certainly being professional as well as personal challenges, but I think there's ways to overcome it. And particularly if you're very sort of passionate about what you do, you work around those sort of constraints.
And I have to say, Caryn, you and I were exchanging emails last night somewhere between 9 and 10. So, yes, you definitely do that. I want to kind of move from what we've been discussing in this first part of the session to those personal characteristics and qualities of founders and focus a little bit on some of the business bits as well. But I wanted to pause here for a second and also direct you back to that chat section again and ask you to share, and folks can kind of read this and see for themselves the thoughts on this, but to share, listening to what you have to this point in the session, what do you think that you most need to advance your career right now? What would be the most helpful thing for you? Is it a mentor, for example? Is it upskilling in certain areas? What would help you the most right now to assist you in advancing your career? And I guess also to advancing perhaps your interest in becoming a founder. So let's kind of make it nice and broad. And while you're thinking about that and throwing that into the chat, let me turn to those business bits. It's hard to have a discussion of this type where we use the word founder and nature and nurture without, touching at some point on technology. It comes into the discussion in just about every way, shape and form. And so I wanted to focus on that for a second. And SJ, I'm going to get you to draw on Tiggles here and basically chat with us about this. Do you think that, or I guess what are the real opportunities and challenges of tech today for business, legal business, or any business, do you think?
Yeah, Terri, it's a great question. I think we're in a new industrial revolution, the digital revolution. This is going to affect every organisation, every industry. In fact, frankly, it's very hard to think about any sort of activity that it's not going to affect. And because of that, the ability to understand technology and the ability to know how to connect technology with business and opportunities is a key thing for any founder or any entrepreneur. And frankly, I even think for any lawyer. And I think the lawyers who are going to be the most in demand in the future are the ones who are able to see the business problem, the business opportunity, and also know enough about the technology to figure out where the fix is, and to connect and communicate the opportunity between the business and the data scientists and the technologists who are capable of building the solutions. So this is what's called digital translators, and this type of a skill is going to be greatly in demand in the future. So I do think that understanding about technology is a very important for anyone in any industry. What I would say, and I really want to emphasize this, is that innovation, legalpreneur, I tried that many times. Legal entrepreneur is really about people. It's about being able to paint the vision, to communicate the vision, and to lead and inspire a team. So to align and inspire people to build that capability, to communicate the vision and deliver those results. That's really important. And it's about the people. It's not about the tech.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sacha, you must see that in what you do as well, because I mean, this is at the core of your business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what SJ's said there, how it's about the people and also really reflects, I guess, my approach, which is being really client oriented. So I encourage, legal professionals, whether you're in-house or within your private practice, try and think about what are the problems that you're trying to solve and what is the problems that your clients are trying to solve. So your internal clients, if you're in the in-house side. And I think there's some really fantastic opportunities right now that I sort of see technology being able to enable. And for the in-house legal teams, it's about how can you use technology to improve your internal client service delivery and to improve that client experience. And I think that's, you know, that just opens up the door to so many possibilities and so many opportunities. And I think likewise from the private practice side, you know, law firms, you know, can be really using technology to improve their own client service delivery. How can they embed themselves within their clients' processes and to really take that customer experience to the next level? And I think, you know, there's so many ways that that technology can do that, but you can sort of see how we're starting with the people, we're starting with the problems, and we're starting with the clients, and then the technology, you know, comes in to help enable that.
Yeah, absolutely. Caryn, what are your thoughts about this? Because you're kind of looking at this in, I guess, that broader sphere as well, where, you know, tech, artificial intelligence, data are kind of enablers for a whole different way potentially of practicing as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Terry, I think my views are very aligned to Sacha and SJ's. And I think the key word Sacha used, and you just used it as well, Terry, is really that technology being an enabler. You know, you can use technology for a lot of different areas, and it's trying to work out where it is best placed to support your processes or re-engineered processes. But it is really about that enablement piece, and the technology is not going to solve problems for you. You know, I often use the mantra around, if you actually apply technology to a broken process, my view is you actually make that process far more inefficient, ironically, rather than actually more efficient. So it's really important to think about it in the context of your people and the capability, and also around, you know, what is the process you're trying to rectify or fix, or what is the area you're trying to apply it to. So definitely with that lens, I think, you know, it's also trying to identify where the technology is best placed to assist with at present. I think it's probably fair to say that artificial intelligence has not necessarily provided the value we might have thought. You know, 5 years ago, we used to see lots of headlines around, you know, AI is going to be taking over all of our jobs and robots will be doing all of that for us. It's certainly not played out like that, but there are some really effective technologies that can really, I think, sort of streamline legal services and get rid of some of that low-hanging fruit that, frankly, the lawyers don't need to be doing at this stage in their careers, whether they're junior or senior. I mean, what's interesting from my perspective is I often get calls from junior lawyers asking me whether they require, whether they need a data science or you know, mathematical degree, or even, you know, coding ability. And my view is absolutely not. I think obviously that's always helpful, but I actually think you need to understand ways in which you can apply technology to solve your particular problems, rather than having an in-depth, detailed understanding around that technology. It's more about understanding what it can do at a high level, and then being able to think, well, who can I contact? Who can I work with to actually enable that transition?
And it is like connecting the dots. I mean, today we're talking about, you know, thinking like a founder, but it is taking those things that we've seen throughout this session that you have all mentioned and we've seen in the chat, the new, the different, the ideas, pushing out of the comfort zone, being comfortable with ambiguity, upskilling perhaps in technology, but using it. Every time we're having or joining a couple of those words together, we're also talking about opportunities, challenges for sure, but opportunities, right?
Absolutely challenges, but yes, absolutely opportunities, and also very diverse careers. You know, if I think about my entire team, there are many that have been practicing professionals, you know, legal professionals, you know, prior. Some are technologists, some have data science degrees, some are management consultants, and yet they're all operating within a law firm, helping to deliver legal services. You know, there is a really a big shift in multidisciplinary and sort of teams, and working alongside many different professionals to deliver legal services. And I think we'll probably see a lot more of that going forward.
Absolutely. And I wanted to pick that up, but I also wanted to pick up some stuff that we've seen in the chat here as well. And just focus for a second on this whole idea of humanity. It's interesting, isn't it, as we talk about technology, what we're talking about hand in hand there is the emphasis on our humanity, and perhaps even more so than before. And I guess in the nature of, or a business context, what we're also talking about is relationship building. It's about networking. It's about finding the mentors that a couple of you have spoken about, and them being so critical in your careers. So Fiona, let me throw this question first to you, because I think you raised it quite specifically as well. How important, as we think about setting up your own business, advancing it, developing it, building it, whatever the case may be, is this concept of relationship building and networking?
I think it is absolutely crucial. It doesn't matter what business you are setting up, as some of the others have just talked about in relation to tech. The tech is there to help people, and a business is there to help people. And I'm looking at the comments too, and a lot of the people on the line talking about how they're looking for mentors, etc. And I think there's three critical things that I would urge people to think about, no matter what age or stage you're at in your career. The first is finding your crew. So finding a group of people who really understand you and who you really understand. Now, I'm a big believer in spending time with people that you like and where you actually enjoy their company. I just think life's way too short. Sometimes when you're more junior in your career, or perhaps even at partner level, you don't always have that flexibility or that luxury to be able to say, hey, I don't want to mix with you today. But certainly when you're starting your own business, that is definitely something that you can focus on, is being around people that you enjoy being around. So finding a group who maybe are also starting out in their own business, or even better, a bit further ahead, who can help you with that advice and support. The second key thing, I think, is to never, ever, ever burn your bridges. So this is advice I give to everyone. You never know where people will end up. So when I left legal recruitment to start my career as a coach, my first corporate clients were clients that I'd had as a legal recruiter. And my first individual coaching clients were lawyers who I'd placed as a legal recruiter. And even now, 12 years on in my business, some of the women who've joined my signature program in Women Lawyers Academy are people that I've known for years. They've been around me for years and years and years. And so I think maintaining those relationships, and that's where technology is just perfect, because LinkedIn and other ways of staying connected to people, and then obviously trying to bring in the human connection where you can, is absolutely perfect for keeping in touch. And the third key thing that I would urge people to do is, I think, a lot of women, when they come to me for help, they'll say, oh, I don't have a network, Fiona, or I don't have a big enough network. I don't know enough people. The reality is most of us have a much larger, more diverse network than we give ourselves credit for. And so taking some time out when you're getting started with something, or when you're in the process of building your business, taking time out to just really look at who is in your network and who can they introduce you to. It's so much easier to get introductions from someone that you already know than it is to be sending cold emails or cold connection requests on LinkedIn or whatever. So to me, it's the life and blood, the lifeblood of every business is who you know and how you continue to maintain and nurture those relationships, Terri.
And even creating a network, right? I mean, we'll go out of our comfort zone, right, and become an entrepreneur and just create a network of like-minded people that you can communicate with. Yeah.
I always say to people, if you can't find the right group, create your own, which is
absolutely.
So yes, there's, and you also, my last point on it is that don't think that just because you're not particularly extroverted or outgoing, some of the best networkers and business builders I know would consider themselves quite highly introverted. It is definitely about quality of people in your network, and you just need to find a way that works for you. If you don't like going to big events, don't go to big events. There are plenty of other ways to really nurture and grow those relationships.
Absolutely. Folks, we've got a couple of minutes for questions. So if you have a burning question at this point, please do put that into the Q&A box and we will certainly pull that up for you. And while folks are thinking about that, I'm going to do a little bit of a round robin here about the topic of our discussion, thinking like a founder, is it nature or nurture? And I'm going to invite, at the same time as our panelists are speaking to that, for everyone to throw your thoughts into the chat again. Do you think it's nature? Do you think it's nurture? Or coming to you first on this, Sarah, because I think you mentioned at the outset, it's probably a little bit of both. So we've got a nurture. We've got one nurture there. Keep the chat coming. Sarah, what do you think? Nature or nurture or both?
Look, I think it's both. I think to be optimistic about what we can achieve in this world, we have to think it's a bit of both, and we can work hard to achieve it if we want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Genevieve, what are your thoughts?
I think it's like anything to do with teamwork. It needs to be complementary. So if you're one, you need the other. It's all about building the team to support the endeavour that you're pursuing.
Brilliant. We've got both here, but we've also kind of got that it might evolve from one to the other. Sacha, what do you think about that?
Oh, actually, even though I do have a background, family and as entrepreneurs, I actually think a lot of it is nurture, because a lot of it is about where you are at that right time and taking up an opportunity and then what you do with it, and then growing yourself, and like what Genevieve said, taking on each day, stepping out of your comfort zone and pushing harder and stepping up. So I actually think big believer in it being nurture.
Riz, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a little bit of both. Well, maybe nurture more than nature. And I think Fiona touched upon a few things that help that happen, if that makes sense. So we've touched upon it throughout this conversation. There's things like mindset, surrounding yourself with the right people who are going to be supportive, who are going to lift you up, not drag you down. Having, a belief in yourself as well. All of those things play a part in whether it's nature or nurture. And I think the nurture aspect outweighs the nature aspect in that respect. And for me personally, it's been the last 2 years hard work, almost 2 years, lots of hard work, but lots of fun, lots of pleasure, lots of meeting amazing other founders, mostly women, who have been super supportive. I received an email last night from a business owner who I've helped, and she sent this wonderful email introducing me to somebody else. And the words she used about me made me cry, but in a good way, because they were so wonderful and kind and not something I've necessarily been used to in previous roles where this was different. I found my people, if that makes sense. I made sure that I surrounded myself with the right people. I nurtured my soul, so to speak. I nurtured myself with the right mentors, the right coaches, etc. So I'd say more nurture than nature.
Thank you for that. And I know we are almost out of time, but I do want to touch on this with you, Caryn, Fiona, and SJ. So Caryn, nature or nurture?
I think it would have to be both, but I lead more to nurture. So I'd probably say like a 60-40 split, particularly if you can sort of really foster that growth mindset and the like. I lean towards nurture.
Both is kind of winning in the chat at the moment.
Yeah.
Fiona, what do you think?
I think it's definitely both. I think nature can help you maybe step outside your comfort zone, take the risk, but you can't run a good business without the nurturing of your skill set, your mindset, and everything, your relationships, everything else that goes alongside it.
Yeah, absolutely. And SJ, the last word is yours on this.
I like to believe it's nurture predominantly, because that is something that I have control over. And to unpack that, I think it's like 3 peas in a pod. You need to have some passion, you need to have the power to push through all of those barriers, and you need to be able to align and inspire and build relationships with the people. So the power and the passion and the people. Thank
The
you.
3 Ps, the 3 Ps. That's what we're ending on. That's fantastic. Folks, thank you so much for attending today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you and such a diverse group, which was also reflected in the amazing panelists. Thank you all so much for being so willing to share your experience, being so candid in your thoughts as well. Really, really appreciate that. And I want to also thank all of our supporters. You would have seen all of those folks in the materials that advertise this. We at the Centre don't really do anything without the generosity and support of people such as the folks that you see here in the panel and others who help us get the word out to our network, your networks, I hope as well, and create these opportunities to come together. I mentioned at the outset that in this session, it's a series. It's the first of a series. We could have spent hours with each one of these folks, as you will know, discussing these issues in detail, and we want to. So please be sure to let us know in the evaluation the topics that are important to you, so we can be sure to hold more of these sessions as well. I hope you enjoyed this. Please follow us on all of the usual places, LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook, for announcements about more events in the series. But on that note, and again, to all of our panelists, an absolute pleasure to spend the time with you. And again, thank you for your generous contribution to this session today. We so appreciate it. Thank you.
Terri, thank you everyone.
Thank you. Thanks
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.